Yeah, I don't know if this whole film director game is going to be interesting or not. That's not really a good way to intro the thing. This whole.
I don't know if the podcast you're about to listen to is going to be interesting.
I mean, you can say that about everything we ever have done, but
yeah. Well, I think, I mean, personally, I feel like we've seen enough movies to play this game, which is kind of the requirement in some ways. I think probably half of these movies we're not gonna be able to comment on, or half of these directors. Sorry.
Well, definitely the earlier days of film is a harder thing to.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I just feel like there's still people I'm under. I mean, even people I've seen maybe one or two. Like I've only seen one movie by Kurosawa. I haven't seen any by Fellini. Again, we're really setting up my credentials here by saying these up front. But to briefly explain, this is a game that Sam Esmail, I guess he enjoys doing with all different people. Sam Esmail being the creator of Mr. Robot, and he did it on this podcast he appeared on called The Big Picture, which actually was worth listening to. It's very entertaining. Spirited discussion and debate, and where it's not really a game, it's more just it's sort of like, what would you call it, a discussion,
a debate,
or
yeah, it's a game in a sense. I mean, we're just talking,
just to stimulate our own ideas about the history of movies, and kind of by greater extension an excuse to talk about our favorite directors and also favorite movies, and sort of the waxing and waning of different periods of Hollywood or film, really. And it'll be interesting to look at which periods are sort of stronger than others.
And it's also, I would say it's also interesting seeing who started when, because obviously all of these people pretty much until I don't know. I guess there are some rare exceptions, but most of these people started not in the decade that they're really most known for. So
yes, I noticed that as well, especially with this last few decades where we've been most intensely following movies. There's a lot of people where, like in the 2000s, that I would not associate as being a 2000s. I would think of as being like Chazelle, for example, is almost the quintessential 20-teens director.
And the same with the 90s. I mean, there are plenty of people in here. Edgar Wright springs to mind. Villeneuve springs to mind.
Yes, and that's also
Wes
the other
Anderson,
thing.
Who are very much 2000s directors in our minds. So.
And the way I'm doing this, by the way, is the categorization is based on their first movie, and it's a little bit shaky because first movie can kind of mean a lot of things. I'm basically doing the first movie. Like, I'm not counting
in IMDb.
Yeah, but like, I'm not sure if My Best Friend's Birthday is pre-90s for like Tarantino, but for the sake of, since that's like a lost movie basically, we're just gonna say it's Reservoir Dogs. But I guess let's jump all the way back to the
1910s,
and I guess before. I'm not sure if I put people who were before that, but basically anyone.
Yes. You did, actually.
Who debuted before 1919.
Yeah. Because D.W. Griffith, I think his first movie is actually 1908.
And now, is that a feature movie?
No, they didn't have features back then. I mean, obviously.
Right, so I'm going by feature length movie.
That's well, I guess the first I guess this is good to talk about because he directed the first feature length movie, which is
your favorite film.
Yeah. Oh dear.
Actually, I really shouldn't joke about that because I don't want to get you canceled. But Birth of a Nation.
Birth of a Nation, which
I've never seen. I mean, have you seen it?
I have seen it. Yeah.
You have seen Birth of a Nation?
Yes.
Oh,
of
really?
course.
Oh, how is it?
It's very rough. I mean, it's very.
I mean, obviously rough in its racial politics.
No, yeah,
but also,
but regardless of that, I mean, it really is. It's very. It's very difficult to watch, to be honest. Just regardless of even without the racial connotations. Yeah, there's.
I mean, it's a fledgling of film making, so it's still...
Yes, it's very hard to watch. I would say my experience pre 1920. I haven't really liked any of the movies that I've seen that have been from that era.
I enjoy some of the shorts, like the early, like the Méliès stuff is nice. I mean, the stuff works well in short bursts. The one I like that's a feature is the Evgeny Bauer film that you recommended. That was Twilight of a Woman's Soul. I felt like that held up pretty well.
Yes, that is actually really good. I completely forgot about that movie.
Yeah, I mean he's pretty solid. I mean that's the only one I've seen by him, but yeah, definitely this decade. I almost felt like I could have compressed these first 3 decades because there's fewer movies and fewer directors.
Yes.
And I'm very ill-suited to talk about the people in the 1910s.
Yeah.
But,
well, so I would say
I have a clear favorite here by far, though, of who I've seen.
Oh, okay. Who's yours then?
Ernst Lubitsch.
Oh yeah. Okay. So I was actually gonna say he is among my favorites of that decade, obviously. Just by almost Ninotchka alone, because I've
never seen Ninotchka.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I highly recommend Ninotchka.
Did Wilder wrote that one, right?
Yes, he did. Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah. So almost by that alone, I consider him to be like one of the greatest of all times. But I really haven't seen too many of his movies that he's directed. So it's hard to call him like one of my favorites. I would say a shout out for me in this decade is Victor Fleming, who kind of is like he's kind of a sleeper hit in this decade, obviously, because he doesn't go on to make movies until
his significant movies are the 30s. Are
in the late 30s, yeah. So and he did Gone with the Wind as well as
Wizard of Oz in the same year, I think, which is crazy.
Yeah, wasn't that 1939, right?
Yeah.
I think The Wizard of Oz was filmed like a year or two earlier, and they held it for release,
right?
Because they were trying to get the color film situation all set up. So I think that took a little while. But I would say that alone, and then he so I would say that those two movies alone kind of were put him as one of the greats in at least American cinema. So I think he deserves a shout out in that way.
Is he? But he's not your number one?
No, I don't think so. I would probably put Lubitsch as my number one, as like I do like John Ford, although I never really connected with him in a way that
I feel the same way. Yeah.
Other people seem to have. When I think of westerns, I think a lot of people think of Ford as kind of the pinnacle, but I really consider the spaghetti westerns to be my favorites, and so I never really had the same love in that way, I guess. So that's kind of my thought on John Ford, but Lubitsch, I mean, I think I connected with Ninotchka in a way that is like almost like no other movie that I've seen
from that time, or just in general.
Just in general, but especially from that time. I don't know. I think that movie almost holds a similar place that something like The Death of Stalin holds for me.
Really?
In a way that's kind of like surprising, especially for a movie being that old.
Wow, I had no idea that you liked that movie that much. I really got to check that out. For me, Lubitsch, I mean, to me, his great movies are The Shop Around the Corner with Jimmy Stewart and wonderful Margaret Sullivan. Probably one of the greatest romantic comedies, and in some ways sets up the a lot of what became overused tropes of romantic comedies, where it's like the couple
right.
who doesn't like each other and then they like each other and they don't. In that one, it's the inspiration actually for the 90s movie You've Got Mail, where it's this couple that falls in love over mail, but they don't realize that they know each other in real life and hate each other in real life. And it's just such a touching, lovely movie. And then his other great movie, I think, is To Be or Not to Be, which is a basically Nazi era satire comedy, but with a very serious edge to it that's interesting, and definitely kind of in the same vein, I guess you would say, of Great Dictator, but I think it's probably funnier and a better movie than that, and I like the movie a lot too. But Lubitsch, I don't know, he has this quality that his movies, they feel very timeless, like he's talking about things that have remained true over the decades, and that you can watch his other. I mean, he's made some other really nice movies like Student Prince in Old Heidelberg and Design for Living and Trouble in Paradise. That all are, they feel in some ways modern in their sensibility, in a way that Ford movies, there are parts of them that hold up beautifully, and certainly he's responsible for some of the great moments in movies. But I don't feel like I love any of the Ford movies I've seen.
Sure, yeah.
Again, these are directors who have filmographies I've definitely not seen extensively. Yeah, and then other people. Yeah, I just feel bad that I have not seen any Murnau or Lang. I haven't even seen Gone with the Wind. So.
Oh, really?
Take whatever my opinions are with a grain of salt here, because
yeah. Yeah, I would say I do need to dive more into Fritz Lang. I've seen Metropolis, but I didn't really feel that compelled by it in any certain way. But I'm interested in M, and I'd like to get more into his sort of catalog. Now, the one that I think is kind of weird that's on here, it's not weird, but I think it's kind of a curveball in certain ways, is von Stroheim, because
I was just gonna say,
he really doesn't have that many movies that he actually directed, and so I don't know. I've seen Greed, and I really like that movie, actually, surprisingly, for a 20s movie. But at the same time, like, I don't consider him to be a director. Like, my association with him has always been in Sunset Boulevard as Max.
Right.
And so to me, I don't know. That's like, he definitely holds a special place in my heart in a certain sense.
But almost more as an actor than a
which
and
is
a
kind of
iconic face too.
Right, exactly. Which is kind of strange. And then I guess other people to shout out. I enjoyed Nosferatu. I think it's a good movie, but I almost like I almost like the movie The Golem more, which is kind of
similar.
Also
Murnau?
No. It's not. Okay. It's not Murnau. It's a. It was directed by Paul Wegener. I don't know if he's on this list, actually, but I don't think he did anything really particularly later on. But yeah, so it's a German movie, and it was kind of the precursor to German Expressionism.
I see.
And and I think it's quite interesting. It's a movie that kind of still holds up in a certain sense. I know it's kind of not it's not relevant to this list necessarily, but I would say that
from that
I would watch Der Golem before Nosferatu. But I do think Nosferatu is an interesting movie. I don't think it's
all right.
Particularly great, but I think it's interesting.
Yeah, and an important movie. Well, it sounds like Lubitsch wins this at least for me, by far.
Yeah,
I mean, I would put him up with some of my favorite directors, actually.
Yeah, for sure.
So moving on, if we move on to the 20s.
This is going to be a hard one, for sure.
It definitely lights up more. It's kind of interesting because the people in the decade we just did, most of them's most famous movies were in the 30s and 40s and even the 50s. But some of these people in the 20s, you know, did their most famous work in the 20s. Like Keaton, all of his work is in the 20s. It's kind of one of the great tragedies of movies that he only, you know, he made 13 movies and was done directing by the time he was like 35. And pretty astounding. But there's a number of people who have made, you know, some of my
just
favorite
incredible
stuff.
movies. I mean, yeah. So I mean, obviously Hitchcock certainly comes to mind as someone who's considered to be, you know, the greatest of all time in many senses. Mm-hmm. Again, he's kind of one for me that I enjoy several of his movies, but I've never been... He's kind of like Ford in that way, where it's like, I do kind of wish that I could dive deeper into his filmography, but at the same time, I haven't... he hasn't connected with me in the way that some of these other directors have on this list. Mm-hmm. I would say, frankly, if we're just putting a complete label on these things, and I know this is very difficult, but because this decade is so there's so many great directors, but I think Ozu might be my favorite of this decade. Wow. Yeah, I think so, and that's hard to say because I do love Howard Hawks as well, and then obviously Chaplin and Keaton are up there as some of the greatest of all times. But yeah, I mean, I think Ozu has a catalog that is, it's certainly not accessible to most people, but has really connected to me over the years, that I've seen his movies. So
wow, I had no idea that he was that high in your estimation of filmmaking. It's very interesting.
I think so. I mean,
because Hitchcock really to me seems more on brand for your brand of creepiness.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, isn't it?
And Ozu is associated with very sort of soft and gentle.
Yeah, you would think that I would have the opposite opinion, but in some ways, I almost appreciate the there's like it. Ozu is sort of unmistakable, and he's you can't copy him in a sense. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. He stands out as being someone who is really able to capture a mood and a scene that I think I don't know if I've ever seen since. I
sure.
guess.
Well, I mean, it's hard for me to argue against Ozu because I've only seen one of his movies, Tokyo Story, but I feel like there's a chance if I go back to that one and watch more of his movies, I might really like him, because the one director who has emulated him, I think, the most directly is Hirokazu Koreeda. Yes, he's probably one of my favorite living directors right now, and probably my favorite Japanese director of all time.
Right.
So, and I'd be also curious what you would think of it, because I don't think you've seen any of Koreeda's movies, except for The Truth, which is a French movie he did.
Yeah, which I did like, although I didn't.
It's not really completely a movie.
Yeah, I didn't get completely attached to it, I would say.
Yeah, that was just a, solid, good movie. But there's a lot of people here who, it's funny because there's a lot of people here who have made like one movie I absolutely love. Like Montebello did Lady of the Night. Frank Capra probably made my favorite movie of the first 50 years of cinema, which is It's a Wonderful Life. Who was the other? Oh, and Weiler, Best Years of Our Lives. I don't know if you've seen that, but that's
I haven't seen.
Movie.
I haven't seen that, but I have actually seen Roman Holiday.
Oh,
which I thought was very good. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I agree. I agree about Weiler. He's an interesting one. Have you seen Ben-Hur? I haven't seen it all the way through.
I haven't either, but
clips of it.
I've seen clips of the chase, and I'm sure it's great.
Yeah.
For me, the two that stand out are Hitchcock and Keaton.
Sure.
I mean, probably a little bit unfair because I've probably seen more movies by both of them by a little bit, but both are just, to me, absolute directors at the pinnacle of film craftsmanship, and are just technically brilliant in their own ways. Keaton, in terms of his insane daring stunts,
feats
and also and also his ability with comedic timing as well, because I think we talked about this last week, how I just think he's eons funnier than any of the other silent film stars and directors.
I agree.
And but also like there's a very light touch to it. It doesn't feel like he's trying hard. It feels like it feels very tossed off in a way. And I think probably my number one is Hitchcock. I mean, it's a little generic to say, but Rear Window is one of my favorite movies, and I'd say Vertigo
which I haven't seen. So.
Oh right. Oh, interesting.
It's on the list. It's on the list. So if I'm sure I will adore that movie because I've heard nothing but incredible things. Have you seen Rope?
No.
That's another that I'm really interested in seeing.
There's still a lot of Hitchcock movies that I still need to see, but on the basis of those, North by Northwest, Strangers on a Train, Psycho, I think he has to be number one for me. I mean, he's great when you can watch these movies and they're just thrillers, but you can still watch them over and over and they're just as compelling. I mean, there's nothing as compelling as the first time you watch Rear Window, but it still is compelling, and there's a lot. I don't know. In that movie, he captures something very true about the feeling of kind of. It's almost about like wishing you could step into other people's lives, as he's looking at all this tapestry of people's apartments. He's just wonderful.
Yeah, the one of the kind of wild card Hitchcock movies that I think is really funny and very dark is The Trouble with Harry. I don't know if you've seen that.
No, that's a divisive one.
Yeah. Is it actually?
Oh well, I mean, I've talked to people who hate that movie.
Interesting. Yeah, I think The Trouble with Harry is a lot of fun and very interesting. In some ways, I can see maybe some of what the criticisms are in that it's kind of it's almost so over the top that you kind of get it after a while. You're like, all right, but
it's like satirical, right? I mean,
yes, it's a satire. But I think it's very funny. I think it's interesting. Have you seen Rebecca?
No. See, another one that.
I've seen. I've again seen parts of it because we read that in high school. The book. So, it was good. But again, I only saw parts of it, so I can't really tell you a whole opinion of it.
Yeah, Hitchcock has that quality that I think I found recently I really like in movies. For modern directors, people like Fincher or Roman Polanski, or directors who there's like this kind of cool creepiness to them that I think I've talked to you about, where it's just it's not so creepy that you're scared necessarily, but it just is this sense of kind of constant unease that's very compelling and for me very fun to sit with. I don't know. He makes the kind of movies I like, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right.
But so that's 20s. Ozu was really out of left field, Cameron. Very interesting.
Yeah. No, I really adore some of his movies. I honestly.
Yeah.
So let's move to the 30s. For me, this is a very strange list because there's one name in mind that basically, I don't even have to look at the other other names on this list.
I think we have the same one. Yeah.
Which is Billy Wilder, obviously. I mean, he may or may not be my favorite director of all time. I don't know.
Wow.
I think so many of his movies resonate with me. And he just has this humor and this darkness and I don't know. In some ways, it's a very sad story. The story of his life and his experience in Hollywood. But at the same time, he has this like very sick and wonderful sense of humor. His movies have a lot of life and curiosity, and I don't know. I think he embodies something that Hollywood wasn't doing at the time, in the 50s and 60s. And he really pioneered something that I think
also
also
a way
hasn't
maybe
been emulated since.
Yeah, pioneered, or also maybe I was gonna say like kept alive from the pre-code era too.
Yes.
Where it's like the sense he was able to kind of have a sense of honesty that I think a lot of movies from the period he worked in
100%.
maybe lacked, or they maybe were overly sentimental. But he really managed to make movies that were they're incredibly cynical and incredibly cutting and biting, but also, I mean, he's not as warm as someone like Lubitsch, who he's compared to a lot, but I don't feel like I feel like there's a humanity to his movies, and they also can be somewhat affecting in their own kind of way, in a way that maybe people
I 100%
underrate.
agree.
Particularly The Apartment, which I think is kind of the peak of his craft, where it's I think that movie is a wonderful sort of portrait of loneliness and of how would you describe the feeling? That movie has this just wonderful feeling to it that is completely holds
I don't
up.
want to say like nihilism, but there's a certain sense of like I guess like aimless wandering in life, right? You know,
Is
it's
it
like
weird to compare it to like Taxi Driver? Because
in a sense, yeah, in a sense, it does have that same sort of.
He has a more hopeful outlook. Lemon does than Bickle, but it is a kind of a similar portrait of a guy who's like, you know, kind of from on the outside of things and
yes,
looking in, you know.
Yeah, no, I would say some different ones that I think are a lot of fun and very interesting. Kiss Me Stupid is a very funny movie.
Oh, really? So you
Yes.
like that movie?
I love it. I think it's so funny.
We talked about it in the class, and a lot of the guys, they said it was terrible. But
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
that's sad.
Interesting.
I think Kiss Me Stupid
I've never seen it.
is very funny. Again, very dark and in some ways nihilistic. But I don't know. I enjoyed it a lot. I think he has just a wicked sense of humor.
I don't know if we said explicitly, but also probably one of the greatest screenwriters, if not the greatest.
Yeah, 100%.
Because I mean, I'm watching his movies. I watched Ace in the Hole, the one I watched most recently.
Yeah,
and
Ace
every
in the
other
Hole is
line,
great.
I'm just
It's
going,
fantastic.
What a great line! What a great
Yeah.
line! Just the whole movie. It's just astounding.
Yeah, Ace in the Hole is there's something about that movie that just is so timeless. I think. I don't know. It's fantastic.
It might be the darkest one. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, that's true. Have you seen A Foreign Affair?
No.
That's great as well. It's set in post-war Berlin, and the main character kind of falls in love with like an ex-Nazi captain, basically, and it's very interesting. I don't know. I think there's a lot. The movie says a lot, but it's I would say it's very slept on.
Yeah, I've barely heard anything about it, actually.
Yeah. And then obviously Double Indemnity is just
Great.
I mean, it's just spectacular. It's so that's a movie that couldn't be overrated. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean it's sort of the prototypical film noir.
Yes.
And maybe it might be my favorite film noir, classic noir.
I would say it's mine, although I'm not I've never been particularly, I don't want to say interested in noir, but I just haven't dived as deep as I certainly could.
I haven't either, but I got a very nice crash course in noir in my high school class with Miss Green, and we watched a lot of the classics, and that was definitely my favorite of the classics.
Right.
Though a lot of good ones.
Yeah, no. So I mean, I think the fact that there are literally 4 movies that I could hold as that on any given day I could say are his greatest. I would say
did we even touch Sunset Boulevard yet?
No, exactly. Yeah. I would say The Apartment, Sunset Boulevard, Double Indemnity, and for me, Some Like It Hot. I know you don't love that movie, but
I don't love it's okay. I would put Ace in the Hole as the fourth one probably.
Interesting. Yeah. The fact that literally all four of those, if you asked me on a different day, I would give you a different answer, basically, of what the best Wilder movie is, and that says a lot, I think.
I think that with Some Like It Hot, it might just be like I haven't seen his other comedies, but like I wonder if maybe his comedies aren't like the comedic stuff in the movies. To me, is not my favorite thing in it. Like to me, the stuff that makes me laugh is just like how dark it gets, like just how cynical Kirk Douglas is in Ace in the Hole, or Barbara Stanwyck in Double Indemnity being just like blatantly horrible.
Just the evil, just completely evil.
Like that stuff is what makes me laugh.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, obviously, just one of the great writer-directors of all time, and definitely someone I look forward to seeing more movies. If we could briefly look at other people in this decade, I just want to I touch on. I feel like Carol Reed is someone who people. Is worth looking at. I'm not sure if you've ever seen The Third Man.
I have, yeah. I thought it was good. I didn't connect with it sort of as much as some people have, I would say.
Actually,
I liked Citizen Kane much more as far as a vehicle for Orson Welles, I guess. So
I mean that's fair. Carol Reed. I don't know. He's a very stylish filmmaker. We just saw his movie Odd Man Out, and his use of his cinematography and his use of shadow in those movies is just astounding.
Right.
And now that I think of it, actually, I hate to do Billy Wilder dirty, but I think Third Man actually might be my favorite, if it counts as noir, film noir, because I love that movie personally. It's sort of interesting though, because I haven't seen tons of movies by him, but he's not someone who's like has tons of classics the way like Wilder or Hitchcock do. He just has like 2 or 3, Another person like that also is Leo McCarey, who did a lot of movies people don't really talk about, but he did Make Way for Tomorrow, which is probably my favorite movie of the 1930s. It's a wonderful movie about...
I haven't seen that.
It's basically the inspiration for Tokyo Story. It's basically about kids taking care of their elderly parents, and the parents being separated and all the inconveniences of that. It's absolutely masterful. And then on the other side of that, McCarey directed, I think, the best Marx Brothers movie and one of the funniest movies ever, which is Duck Soup. So it's sort of interesting how you have these people who are not as canonically recognized,
right,
but have made 1 or 2 movies that immortalize them. Actually, we didn't talk about in the 20s, Michael Curtiz, who made, I think, like maybe 100 movies. Like he just cranked out movies.
Wow.
And probably most of them were no good, but amongst them, were The Adventures of Robin Hood, Mildred Pierce, and Casablanca.
Right.
And I think I've basically
come around
to recognizing
Casablanca, right?
Yeah, I've recognized that it is as great as people say.
It's fantastic. It's a fantastic movie.
And not just a great as a result of a good script. I mean, it's a beautifully filmed movie. Like it really,
yes.
His command of staging and lighting in that movie is really great. So it's there's a lot of people we'll be talking about as we go on who maybe are not the most well known, but still have just like 1 or 2 things that
we love
that immortalize them.
Yeah, I would say George Cukor is in my mind he has some of the funniest movies of the time period.
I haven't seen some of those. Are you talking about Philadelphia Story? Or?
So Philadelphia Story, yes, as well as a movie called Adam's Rib, which is, I mean, it's just hilarious. I think it's so funny.
Mick really hates the what was that?
My roommate just planted a drink on my
that's very
on
nice.
my desk, which is
I can't
very
see
kind.
them, but it sounds very nice. Kukor. Sorry. Philadelphia. Mick for some reason really doesn't like those like Hepburn comedies.
Oh, really?
I
find them so charming.
Of shock from the old people in our class, because
I find them so charming and so hilarious. Another movie that is like that is called Holiday. It's Katharine Hepburn and Cary Grant, which I think.
Right.
I think
he likes the Holiday from the early 30s. He doesn't.
Oh my goodness!
He doesn't like the Grant Hepburn one at all.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
I would say it's not as funny as something like My Man Godfrey, which I think is just a hilarious movie.
Mm-hmm.
But and then there's another movie called The Awful Truth, which is really funny as well.
Oh, that's McCary.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. The Awful Truth is a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I took a screwball comedy class, so these movies kind of are
You're very
in
well
my
in that genre.
Yeah, in my sort of canon of being some of the most interesting movies of the 30s and 40s. And we'll get to it eventually when we talk about. Oh no, we already talked about Howard Hawks. Howard Hawks should be up there as well in the 1910s or in the 1920s.
Mm-hmm.
For one of my other favorite movies, almost of all time, which is Bringing Up Baby. I think that movie is absolutely hilarious. I think it stands the test of time as being
another
literally one of the funniest movies of all time.
Another director whose screwball comedies were slandered by Mick in the last. That was the one he listed: Philadelphia Story, Bring It Baby, and His Girl Friday.
Oh my goodness!
He said he doesn't think they're funny.
Oh my god!
I can't comment because I haven't seen any of them. In fact, I hate to out myself as a fool, but I have not seen any Howard Hawks movies. So,
really?
Definitely a blind spot to.
He's one I would say should be up there. Oh, another movie that I think is pretty funny and absurd is a movie by Howard Hawks. I can't believe I forgot to talk about him entirely, to be honest.
Yeah,
another movie that he did is called Ball of Fire with Barbara Stanwyck.
Oh, I've been wanting to see
and
that.
And Gary Cooper. It's very funny. It's so absurd, and like he's in this it's almost like this research group, and he's very like uptight, and Gary Cooper he's very like uptight and he's a linguist, and he meets this basically she's essentially a stripper. And
really?
he ends up coming around to her, but he's completely put off to her by in the beginning, and it's very funny. The innuendo is just
my
just
screensaver was Stanwyck, just for the second.
Oh yeah,
from Babyface.
I saw that. Yeah,
probably I would say probably my favorite actress of the golden age of Hollywood. I don't know what you
Barbara Stanwyck.
Yeah, I don't know what you would say, but
I think just the fact that she has some of the she certainly has some of the greatest roles in golden age cinema.
Yeah.
Although I do think I think Katharine Hepburn is probably up there for me. I think she's so fast and hilarious. I don't know. I think she really kills me, especially in something like Bringing Up Baby. She's just like on fire the whole movie. I think she's fantastic.
I gotta watch more Hepburn to make a fair judgment there.
Yeah.
But I've liked what I've seen of her. I was actually thinking an interesting episode we could do, though it'd be a little bit laborious, is to compare different versions of Little Women over the years.
Oh.
So we watched the Katharine Hepburn one by Cukor, and then we watched the one with Winona Ryder in the 90s, and then we do Gerwig's Monstrosity, and then it'd be fun to compare the three of them.
And then we have
fun
to
get my mom to do it too.
We have to read the book too,
Well, we don't need to go that far. All right, well let's move on.
What I'll say, what is funny is I haven't actually seen her sort of Hepburn's more I guess, more famous movies, which would be The African Queen. I haven't seen that. I haven't seen On Golden Pond either. So
Yeah,
I know that's her as an old woman. But I haven't seen either of those. So
I'm very another blind spot for me. Katharine Hepburn. She's wonderful in Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, though. That one I saw recently. All right, well, let's move on to the 40s. At this rate, is going to be our longest podcast by
I know, and
2 hours.
We backtrack too, back to the 20s.
yeah. But I mean, in a way, I'd almost rather just be more in depth and split it into 2 parts if need be.
I think that's fine. Yeah.
If you're what you're doing the rest of tonight.
Totally. Yeah. No. I think that's totally fine.
Okay, so then in the 1940s, I feel like. Who sticks out to me? I think there are 2 for me. I'm trying to guess who yours is going to be. I really don't have a clue, honestly.
I think I would say certainly Kurosawa sticks out.
Right.
Certainly Orson Welles, just for Citizen Kane, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really, actually.
And Bergman as well. I mean, he for me is someone who I've only seen. I think 2 of his movies.
What have you seen by Bergman?
I've seen Persona, and let me just pull it up. I've got just like a million tabs open right now.
That's fine. Persona is one of the ones I haven't seen, actually. But
oh, Persona is fantastic. It's really, really good. Let's see. Hold on. I haven't seen The Seventh Seal, which is certainly on my list. Let's see. Oh gosh.
By the way, have you picked one for this decade? Because I don't want to influence you, but I want to see if my guess is correct.
So and then I haven't picked one yet because I'm just thinking about these movies. I would say Preston Sturges made a movie called The Lady Eve, which I think is
just gonna say, speaking of Stanwyck,
and Palm Beach Story, which is kind of slept on, but I think it's really
interesting.
Funny.
The Palm Beach Story is one of the most notorious comedic bombs in the history of
I know. Oh, really?
Yeah, people. It was
They
one of the
like
most
it?
hated movies. He had the most drops maybe after that movie. It was
Wow.
it was a disaster in the class. Fortunately, I missed the class, or maybe unfortunately, I missed that semester, so I didn't. I didn't see it. But
really, they hated Palm Beach Story.
Weird. Yeah, I don't know.
Why?
I've liked
so
every
random.
Sturges movie I've seen. I've liked. In fact, he's probably close to the top in this list for me.
I actually don't even understand that because I think that
I gotta see it to figure it out.
Kind of funny and charming, and I don't know. I don't think. Why would that movie be so offensive? I don't understand.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, I love Unfaithfully Yours though. I think that's just great, and The Lady Eve is quite wonderful, and Stanwyck is astounding in that movie.
It's so good. Yeah.
And also Sullivan's Travels is great too.
I haven't seen that either.
That was gonna be my guess, Sturgis, because I thought you had seen.
Right.
I thought you had seen a bunch in your class, but maybe not.
Yeah. So we saw. Let's see. Well, I mean, he hasn't made a ton of movies either. So. Yeah, I think
that's right. He has a pretty small filmography.
I think we only watched Lady Eve and Palm Beach Story. So
who is it?
I don't know. I think it could be Kurosawa. I think Yojimbo is. I mean, it's an incredible movie. I think it's so good.
Doesn't sound like there's a strong favorite.
I don't
like
think
the
there
30s.
Is. I don't think there is. Yeah, that's kind of it's kind of strange in a sense because I feel like I don't have a complete idea of who my favorite is. Have you ever seen either Playtime or Traffic?
No,
Jacques
I have.
Tati?
Tati is another guy I haven't seen anything.
So that those two were movies that we watched. We watched clips of, but we didn't watch the whole movie. Which is too bad because I really do want to watch. I want to watch Playtime. I think that would what we watched was just hilarious. It was so funny. And then I don't know who else would be up there. Who's the strong favorite for you?
I think by a pretty clear margin it's Bergman.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
Again, there's a little bit of the bias of just I've seen probably more movies by him. Though I've seen more movies by Wells, and I definitely would say I like Bergman over Wells. I mean, Citizen Kane obviously is great, but other than that, I don't think there's anything I really love by Wells, as much as you respect the innovation and the craft. But Bergman is, he's kind of like Lubitsch and Wilder, where you watch his movies, and in a way it's even more surprising than them because you think of him as being kind of austere, but his movies are actually surprisingly accessible. I mean, maybe not Cries and Whispers because it's like very depressing, but I feel like on average you watch his movies and it's about very everyday human interactions and conflicts, and they speak very universally, I think. Let alone just his craft and his cinematography, just his ability.
You love Fanny and Alexander, right?
No, I've never seen that one. The one I love by Bergman is Scenes from a Marriage.
Got
I watched the epic television version with my friend Jasper. It was one of the most profound experiences. Just how long is that? 4.5, 5 hours, and it's just arguments. It's just a couple arguing, basically. It's pretty astonishing. But even like we watched a very minor film by him called Dreams in mixed class, and even that was really wonderful and had some just really great filmmaking. And that was before the period where he became really well known. But yeah, Kurosawa is definitely someone I haven't seen enough by. Nicholas Ray, I saw the first movie by him. It was really great, called In a Lonely Place. And of course, Robert Wise, is probably not anyone's idea of like the greatest director, but he made one of my favorite movies ever, which is The Sound of Music. So he gets points for that. He also loses points for making Star Trek the motion picture. We don't need to get into that. And of course, Stanley Donen and Gene Kelly did Singing in the Rain. So
yes.
Respect to them. But not a decade that I'm particularly. I have anyone who's like particularly high on my all-time list.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Though definitely I think Bergman is someone who probably will ascend that list as I see more of his very immense filmography.
Have you seen A Seventh Seal?
Yeah, it's great.
Okay,
from what I remember.
It's one I'm really looking forward to watching, I would say.
Yeah. All right, well, moving on to the 50s here.
There's plenty. There's plenty
people, but to me there's two. There's two who are.
Would you say Lumet and Kubrick? Is that who you're
correct?
Gonna say?
Correct.
Yeah, I know you so well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would completely second you on Kubrick. To be honest, I don't know if I've seen any No. I've seen Dog Day Afternoon.
And Network we watched together.
And Network, yes, you're right. Yeah. So yeah, I guess
and 12 Angry Men, right?
Yeah, you're completely right. Oh my goodness. So yeah. I've seen.
Pretty good, right?
So yeah, I guess that lifts him up, in my mind. Then, now that I'm thinking about it,
have we both not seen any Fellini movies?
No, I've seen. What's that movie with the balloon? Yes, 8.5. Yes, I actually really liked 8.5. I thought it was very weird, very experimental.
I've been meaning to watch those. That's just one where, again,
I think it's a lot of fun. I wouldn't say it's like the greatest thing ever.
Yeah,
but,
I'm losing credibility every time I admit one of these people I haven't seen. But on the other hand, I feel like it's better to be honest than just like
right. Yeah.
Fellini, he's wonderful, of course.
Yeah. For me, Tarkovsky is a very big blind spot in my mind. I haven't seen any Tarkovsky.
I attempted
movies.
Solaris one time, and I just said forget it.
Have you seen Panther Pachai by
Rai?
Satyajit Rai? Yeah.
No, I haven't seen any of his movies, but
yeah,
I've heard good things.
I saw Panther Pachai.
Padre Panchali.
Right. Yes. Sorry. Padre Panchali. It was good. I thought it was very interesting, especially just considering the time period and sort of the hoops that you would have to jump through in that time to make a movie like that. So yeah, I thought it was interesting, although I didn't love it. It was not my one of my favorite movies. Chris Marker has to be up there for me because he made a movie that I just
The La Jetée?
Absolutely adore, called La Jetée, yeah. Which is a very strange one in my mind, because it obviously it's so like inaccessible in a certain sense because it's all still frames, but I think it just, I don't know. I think it transcends in a certain way.
I'll take your word for it.
Did you watch it?
Yeah, I watched it. I didn't have any impression on me. But,
really?
But whatever. I mean, it's still a movie.
I love it. I think it's so good. I really enjoy it.
I'm just looking at these and I'm like, Louis Malle did My Dinner with Andre. That's pretty great. I feel like there's going to be the main two, or we have a head-to-head. So before we get to that, I just would briefly mention three other favorites would be the Maisels brothers, who are like two of the greatest documentarians of all time. They did the Give Me Shelter about the Rolling Stones and Grey Gardens, which are just two great movies. Truffaut, of course, is wonderful. Particularly Day for Night, which
much better than
contemporary Godard.
Yes,
who shit on Truffaut when he made Day for Night. He said
Truffaut
is a liar. So he made one of the best films ever made about filmmaking. And also 400 Blows is great. Yeah, Truffaut is really wonderful, and I look forward to watching more of his movies. And then Agnes Varda, who we may have
love
mentioned
Agnes
earlier,
Varda.
But, I've only seen a few of her movies, but like Clear from 5 to 7 is really interesting, innovative,
so good, yeah,
beautiful movie. And then almost 50 years later, almost 60 years later, she makes Faces Places, which is maybe even more wonderful.
Yeah. I haven't seen that, and I'm very interested in it.
She makes very simple, playful
documentaries.
Features and documentaries that are very humane and warm in a way that a lot of the French New Wave I don't really find is. And definitely they're my favorite of the New Wave directors.
100%. Yeah. Me too. Yeah, me too.
Now I'm guessing you're gonna put Kubrick. Well, tell me, is Kubrick the one, or is it Lumet?
I would say Kubrick is the one for me, personally. I could see the argument for Lumet, but I would say he's the one that kind of kicked off my. Him and Nolan, I guess. I guess that's kind of a stereotypical answer, but they were kind of the ones early on in my film journey that really kicked off my love for the craft, and so I would say it's Kubrick. It's Kubrick for me. 100%.
Well, to me, it's an interesting comparison to put the two next to each other, because it's almost like you're putting against each other two archetypes of what you can do as an auteur director, which one is Stanley Kubrick, who makes just a handful of movies precisely. He spends years concocting each one, perfecting his craft, having this sort of precise vision and style, pristine camera placement, and just a very sharp kind of filmmaking.
Yeah.
And then Lumet is someone who makes 45 movies over the course of 50 years. He started in 1957, 12 Angry Men, ended in 2007 with Before the Devil Knows You're Dead.
Yeah.
Maybe the greatest last movie of all time, I think. And, did all sorts of movies, and some of them were not successful and some of them were. And he did not, by any means, he's not someone who I don't think you would really recognize his visual style at all. He's not someone who's calls attention to his filmmaking.
Right.
He's just a person who and also Kubrick is a writer-director, and Lumet maybe wrote like 2 of his movies. Mostly they were, he had great screenplays or they were theatrical adaptations that he just took and found the best way to make them. Like 12 Angry Men to me is a movie that has a great script, but he finds interesting ways of taking this thing that could have been very stagey and theatrical and making it very cinematic.
I 100% agree. I think 12 Angry Men, the only way that movie works is with his really, really intensely focused directorial style. I mean, it's completely subtle, and you wouldn't even notice it the first time you watched it, I would say.
No, you don't notice the camera angles changing and all that stuff he talks about. But
the fact that it draws you into their conversation, it draws you into these people who you have no introduction to. I think that's sort of the key to that movie, and that's what not only pulls it together, but makes it among one of the greatest movies of all time. I would say so. Yeah, so I 100% agree.
Also, Tarantino... go ahead.
I would say that personally, it's probably just the fact that I haven't seen many of his more notable works. Like, I haven't seen Serpico. I haven't seen Before the Devil Knows You're Dead. So there's a couple that I'm just missing that it's possible. Or Long Day's Journey into Night.
I haven't seen that one actually, but yeah.
So, So there's some of these that I'm missing personally. So,
sure.
I don't know. That's kind of my thoughts on it. I would love to dive deeper in his.
I would love to dive deeper on both directors because they're both amongst the top 20 of all time in my opinion.
100%.
And there's also another sort of interesting question is, I was mentioning Tarantino because he has this sort of mentality that he's talked about where he when he looks at directors, he values the grade point average. He values the fact that, and that's why he's so sort of obsessive about his own movies, is this idea of someone in the future after he's gone looking at these movies and falling in love with one of Tarantino's movies, and then no matter which one you pick up after that, it's going to be good.
It's very true though, because I mean,
it's tough to pull off though.
Yeah, well, like someone like Lumet is like, I wouldn't know where to go next necessarily. Like, I don't know if, I don't know if I could jump into, I don't know, just to pick a random movie, Daniel or something. I don't know if I could jump into that. Whereas like Kubrick, I think any of his movies, you could find something that you enjoy about them.
Very much so. Yeah, and I think it feels like he had the same kind of mentality as Tarantino, where he had this perfectionistic idea about his movies.
Yeah.
But for me, I don't really feel like I agree with Tarantino. That I don't think people. To me, at the end of the day, it just matters what are the great movies you make, and it doesn't. If you make some bad ones along the way, I don't think that really counts against you. I mean, I don't know. Maybe if it's like Rob Reiner or someone where you have a bunch of great movies front loaded, and then you just never make a great movie again, that hurts a little bit. But I feel like even Peter Jackson has kind of gone that way too.
Right. Yeah. Interesting.
But, and in a way, maybe Lumet did go that way, and if I had grown up with his movies like as he was alive, maybe I would have experienced that, because he definitely went through kind of a critical downturn into the 80s and 90s, and then in a way Before the Devil Knows You're Dead was kind of like a big comeback for him. But when you kind of sort out the great ones, I would put Dog Day Afternoon, 12 Angry Men up there, and probably above any Stanley Kubrick movie, as much as Kubrick is a master of craft. And that's another sort of debate: is are you a great director because you're the greatest craftsman, like you are the most talented director, or are you the greatest just because you made the most great movies? You would definitely say, like, if you gave Kubrick just a random script, he is probably the more talented director than Lumet, just at the physical act of directing. Right. But at the end of the day, I think I appreciate Lumet's films more, and I think they mean more to me, and they're certainly more emotionally moving too. I mean, Dog Day Afternoon is in my top 5 of all time. I mean, it's one of my favorite movies ever.
Right.
And Before the Devil Knows You're Dead is high on my all-time list too. I mean, that's probably the greatest Philip Seymour Hoffman performance, and that's my favorite actor. So that's saying something. I mean, if you look at the resume of great actors Lumet worked with, it's pretty astonishing how many actors gave their greatest performance with him. Like Holden and Dunaway, and Peter Finch in Network. Henry Fonda and 12 Angry Men.
Yeah.
Paul Newman in The Verdict. It's and of course Al Pacino in Dog Day Afternoon, maybe the greatest performance in any movie. So, yeah, I love Sidney Lumet, so he's definitely the one for me. But
all right.
No disrespect to Stanley Kubrick, obviously, as much as I like to make fun of 2001. But.